President Trump plans to hit D.C. streets to evaluate his federalized crime crackdown, assessing performance or, performative. Anything you can do, we can do likewise, similar, sort of. Texas Republicans and California Democrats square off over redistricting. Missouri Republican Senator Schmidt fought the Biden administration as the Show Me State's Attorney General. Now he's a MAGA force in D.C., and he joins us. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Fact: every presidential movement is controlled. No president in the modern era goes anywhere without an armed bubble around him. We want it to be this way. And this bubble knows that the places he travels to have been checked out and cleared to the best of the Secret Service's capability of any potential harm. This, you see, is why it would be farcical for a president to inspect local crime-fighting patrols. Wherever he went, the situation would already, by necessity, be crime-free, with a phalanx of armed and trained personnel and concentric layers of protection around the president. And yet, President Trump says he's going out tonight to see how his federalized law enforcement presence in D.C. is working. The cameras, of course, will trail doggedly behind. Heck, administration's social media teams have already been out on ride-alongs, posting about the robust efforts, the arrests, the federal flexing. Make no mistake, this is having the desired political effect. The president is attempting to, and quite probably has, gained the upper hand in the roiling national political debate over crime. Doing so by running roughshod over federal law, the subject of a lawsuit seeking to block his takeover of the D.C. Police Department, is a hallmark, not a flaw in this strategy. The president says things here in D.C. are terrible. Therefore, he is compelled to act. It is an emergency, crime in D.C., just like the 30 or so emergencies Trump has declared or referred to in order to justify applications of power so far in his second term. In an interview today, Trump called federal law enforcement sweeps and National Guard deployments in D.C. a, quote, test, meaning it could come to other American cities under powers not yet articulated or possibly even in existence. So tonight's patrol may be about D.C. It may also preview coming attractions. More on this, we turn to Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Ed, what do we know about tonight's adventure?
That's about all we know, Major. The press pack that follows him is assembled, and they're leaving shortly. That much we know. Where exactly he's going, who exactly he'll beat, what exactly he'll be told remains to be seen. But to your point, it's going to be a pretty controlled environment because you don't send the President of the United States out to something that could be less than safe by any means. But he's going to be doing this amid polling that shows a majority of Washingtonians oppose this federal takeover, don't think it's going to make the city streets safer, while restaurant owners and other businesses here in the city say foot traffic is down considerably since this began last week, despite the president suggesting otherwise. And it comes a day after his vice president and top domestic policy aide visited Union Station, the main train station here, to thank federal officers, and were greeted with a cacophony of boos, a sign of the direct opposition that people have to what exactly he's been up to. So, this obviously, as you said, is something that, in the White House's belief, is working because it's working with his base, but it's certainly not working with residents here in the city who don't necessarily believe that it's doing anything to significantly drop crime over the long term.
Ed O'Keefe at the White House, thank you very, very much. Back over here to two. The California Assembly has just passed a redistricting plan that would likely give Democrats more seats in Congress. It now moves on to the state Senate. The new map would shift five Republican House seats to be more favorable to Democrats in the midterms. That's in theory. Californians will have to vote on a constitutional amendment for the new boundaries during a special election this November. All this comes in response to Texas Republicans advancing maps that would give a 5-seat advantage, again in theory, to the GOP. The Texas Senate is set to vote on this today after it passed the House. For insight on all of this redistricting drama, we turn to former House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. Kevin, I know you. I've known you for a long time. You loved House district lines. You study them carefully all over the nation, not just in California. Evaluate where we are as a nation in this back and forth.
I'll do that. But first, one thing you have to admit on your earlier story, I thought I just read a point that it's been 7 days since there's been a murder in D.C., one of the longest times. And
that is correct.
I feel like it's safer. But okay, people are arguing about Texas and California. And what people have to understand, we've got the 10th Amendment, so states are different. So what you want to look at are the states' constitutions. In Texas state constitution, the legislature can draw the map, okay? In California, the voters decided in 2011
that an independent commission
would draw it, and a couple points about that. Nobody on the commission could run for one of those seats for 10 years. It also says legislatures cannot draw the lines, okay? In that place of where it is, the voters voted for it with 61% of the vote. That's a major, major victory in the process. And it wasn't one party doing it. There was one party fighting it. Nancy Pelosi and Gavin Newsom spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to defeat it. But now Gavin comes in because he wants to be president.
Governor Gavin Newsom.
Yes. A couple months ago, he's interviewing Steve Bannon. Today, he's fighting. Who knows who he'd be next? He can impersonate anybody. But he wants to override the Constitution. So here, it's illegal for the legislature to draw the lines.
Unless there's this special election mandate to do so.
Okay, even when they do this special election mandate, normally if individuals put a motion on the ballot by signatures, they have to wait like 130 some odd days. Here, no, it's over very quickly. But the voters have a say.
And what do you think the voters are going to say?
If this election is about whether you want to keep a commission or let legislatures draw, the commission will win. This will not. But what Gavin is trying to make is that this is a referendum on
Texas
Trump.
and Trump.
And that's not the case because it's not 5 seats, it's 9 seats. Now, let's remember this. Okay, even if Texas redraws their lines, Republicans will have about 72% of the districts, right? Currently today, and Republicans get about 56% of the vote in Texas. Currently today, Republicans get about 39 to 40% of the vote in California, and we have 17% of the lines, okay? Democrats today have 83%. They want to take Republicans to 6%, to have 94%. When they drew the lines last time, I was in the minority leader. Nancy Pelosi was speaker. We went out and we won 5 more seats just in California. So what Gavin will do will take away the voters' ability to pick one side or the other. What in essence is the politicians are picking their voters instead of voters picking. I like people to have, look, we were in the minority. We wanted to win. We had to get better candidates, better ideas.
Better messaging.
Yes. This
More
takes
money.
this all away. And this is 52 seats in California. So I truly believe you're going to find, look, League of Women Voters are opposed to this. Arnold Schwarzenegger, the former governor who passes during, look, he's not Republican or Democrat. He doesn't like what Texas are doing or anybody else. He's just always has fought gerrymandering. He's out there very strong opposed to it. Charles Munger, who's just a good government person, he's out there. I think you're going to see all these individuals standing up. And when you listen to the hearing, the commissioners who were Democrats said, this is terrible what they're trying to do.
On this program last week, someone I know, you know, Kevin Kiley was on, and he said, look, I've got legislation. I want Speaker Johnson to put it on the floor. Let's just do away at the federal level, meaning Congress passed a law saying we're not going to have mid-session redistricting. Let's just go with the lines that are drawn after the census, and then we're not going to do it for another census. Is that a good idea?
Well, Democrats will probably say they don't want to do that, right? But lo and behold, they did that last time in New York.
Right.
And if you look at Illinois, Pritzker's got an F what they did. Right. So the Democrats are rising up saying, oh, my God, what's happening in Texas? This is going to go from one seat to the other.
But, of course, Democrats point to North Carolina and say that the vote there is even, but the district lines are drawn to inordinately favor Republicans.
Look,
Everyone has a grievance.
Ohio has to redraw. No, they redrew New York last time because they wanted to win the majority because Hakeem Jeffries comes from New York and he still couldn't win the majority. We kept it, okay? This is the problem. Gavin's doing this not because he wants to win the majority. He wants to be the nominee. So he decided interviewing Charlie Kirk and Steve Bannon wasn't going to get him there. So now he says, I'm going to try to take on a personas different. I'm going to show I'm fighting, and I'm going to go against the Constitution.
Could that just blow up on his face?
Yes, it could. He's done this before, meaning he's put another initiative on the ballot to try to hide from the voters. I trust the voters. Let's have the voters decide,
as you well know,
want to keep the
Kevin,
commission or not.
California Democrats say, look, you're complaining about a special election. You guys tried to recall Gavin Newsom. That was costly.
I didn't do that.
No, but other Republicans pushed you to do that.
No. Individuals, because we had Hiram Johnson back in the day. California is progressive. You want to put something on the ballot, you go out and get enough signatures based upon the last election, and you could put something on the ballot. The power rests with the people. But for that same point, when we had the commission draw the lines and 83% of the seats went to Democrats, did I leave the state? Did I protest? Did I say, no, I sat and worked within the rules and I won the majority. 5 seats out of Nancy Pelosi's own state, and I had a 5-seat majority. She lost it in California. Now he wants to override the Constitution. That's just wrong. Each state has their own constitution. What he is doing is overriding California's constitution.
One other quick question about Texas. Chip Roy, who I know you know well, served in the House, is going to run for Attorney General in Texas, leaving the House of Representatives. Your thoughts? You know,
look, he's an attorney. I don't know if he's ever practiced, but I think he'll be a formidable candidate. But I think there's 3 or 4 others running. We'll have to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. We'll be out there giving speeches for Chip Roy?
I'll be out there.
Answer to that, ladies and gentlemen, no. Kevin McCarthy, pleasure.
Pleasure to see you.
Still to come, Hurricane Erin shadows the East Coast, unleashing rip currents and flooding, menacing, among other places, North Carolina, still recovering from Hurricane Helene last year. We talked to Republican Senator Thom Tillis about hurricane season and Trump administration efforts to disband FEMA. Did the construction of Alligator Alcatraz, as it is known by some, violate environmental laws? A federal judge considers that question with impacts there and possibly on other pop-up detention centers. And a California couple was wrongly accused and then publicly shamed for allegedly staging a kidnapping hoax. Their story became a hit Netflix documentary. The survivors are now helping solve cases involving their kidnapper. Fascinating story. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back. We are quite naturally tracking Hurricane Erin tonight. The storm is making its presence known, and that's putting it mildly, in Virginia and North Carolina as it makes its way north. The hurricane's projected path will keep its strongest winds, we are told, offshore. Rob Marciano is tracking the storm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Rob, great to have you. I see you buffeted by the winds. What can you tell us?
Yeah, the winds are pretty intense. We're out on a pier, so we're obviously a little bit more exposed, but it really gives you a good vantage point of what this surf is like here at Virginia Beach. We spent much of the past few days on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which certainly got the worst of the waves and the wind. It was the closest point to which it was the center of Erin when Erin was the closest to the U.S., which was earlier this morning. It is slowly beginning to pull away. That's the good news. Bad news is it's such a big storm. The waves propagating out from it are going to continue to pepper this coastline for the next several days, and not just the Carolinas and the mid-Atlantic, but all the way up into southern New England, and we're certainly going to see that be the case. So we've seen some damage across parts of the Outer Banks. We certainly have seen a lot of coastal flooding, and this wind continues to buffer this area. Not a whole lot major as far as wind damage, because we haven't seen much more over tropical storm force. We didn't expect to. And because of that, we haven't seen much in the way of power outages. So it's really just a lot of tourism disrupted and folks coming out to safely look at these impressive waves.
Rob, very quickly, this is a big holiday weekend approaching. And if you're in the water, even though it doesn't look scary, it is, and you should not do it, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of these beaches are completely shut down. But the lifeguards are on duty, not to save lives, but to get people out of the water if they even try to get in it. So, yes, until the lifeguards and the authorities say it's safe to go in, everybody, for the most part, has been staying out, Major.
Excellent. Rob Marciano, Virginia Beach, Virginia, thanks so very much. During my conversation this week with North Carolina Senator Thom Tillis, we ran a lot of that sound last night. I asked him about the Trump administration's efforts to decrease the size of FEMA. Here's part of that conversation. What do you want to happen to FEMA, and what risks is this administration taking, talking about and implementing maneuvers to shrink its role and hand this over to the states?
Well, it's number one, do you realize it was about a year ago that we were floating down a river in western North Carolina?
I do. I remember that well.
But who knew 6 6, 7 weeks later, we'd have 105 people dead, 2 or 3 still missing, over 250 people
right there
in the region, all affected by Helene. Right there.
Right where we were.
And fortunately, that area, fortunately for those folks, that area was relatively unscathed, relatively speaking. But when I think it was Noam or somebody who was saying that we should eliminate FEMA, my immediate reaction was that's clearly coming from somebody who's never managed a major storm crisis. Because if you think about why FEMA was created, it was in the aftermath of a horrible response to a massive storm. And we realized that storms have this nasty habit of not honoring state lines and county lines, and they just go wherever the hell they want to go. And in this case, it went through Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, up into West Virginia, the western part of Virginia. That was the footprint of a Helene. 250 people dead, $50 billion of damage in North Carolina alone. Do we really want, when they were originally talking about eliminating FEMA, I asked people, do we really want to play paper, scissors, rock to figure out what state or what county leads a disaster? Okay, storm's coming. It's off the Antilles. Not really sure where it's going to go. Everybody pick the straw. Figure out who's going to manage this response. You have any idea how inefficient that would be?
You pick your model. You pick the European model. You pick the
That's right. Okay, well,
model.
If it goes up that string, you'll be responsible. It makes no sense. Now, if you want to make FEMA leaner, if you want to push the staff out of D.C. into regional response areas, if you want to actually act on some of the reforms that we proposed over the past couple of years, great idea. But eliminating FEMA as the main convener of other resources, the other thing about FEMA is it's fairly light in terms of the people that ultimately are on the ground. This is managing state disaster response, local disaster response, the Baptist on mission, all of the American Red Cross, all the people that come around. They're pre-positioned most of the time.
Yeah, moving water.
Yeah. Can you imagine if every time we have a new game plan, right now we know a storm's about to come. There are already assets that were being pre-positioned for the first named storm. Just get ready, guys. May not come, may come. They're ready. They're on the ready. They have that playbook. Can it be more efficient? Of course. Can you cut through red tape and go right down to local government funding of matters? Absolutely. But to eliminate it, that's just naive. It's a lack of experience.
As is plainly evident, lunch was very, very good. You can watch my full interview with North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis on our YouTube page and your favorite podcast platform. That's where you listen to, not watch. Republican Senator Erin Schmidt says he has crafted a blueprint for how conservatives can take on Democrats in the courts and win. He joins me next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Here is a look at what else we and now you are watching this evening. President Trump won a court showdown today over damages in a civil fraud case against him and the Trump Organization. The New York State Appeals Court threw out the $500 million penalty against the president and his company after both were found liable for misrepresenting wealth and inflating property values to obtain more favorable loans. 4 of the panel's 5 judges said the finding of fraud could stand, but all were troubled in one way or another by aspects of the way this case was handled in court. New York State Attorney General Letitia James said she will appeal. A campaign volunteer for New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been suspended after being accused of handing a bag stuffed with cash to a journalist. The aide, Winnie Greco, is said to have stuffed about $300 inside a bag of, get this, sour cream and onion potato chips to a reporter who covers City Hall. This after a campaign stop in Harlem last week. It comes as a former top aide to the mayor, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, faces new corruption and bribery charges in a matter exchanging something for political favors. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 36 Palestinians across Gaza today. The attacks came as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he will restart hostage release negotiations. Israel is preparing for a military operation in Gaza City, densely populated in the center of the Palestinian enclave. The aim, defeating Hamas forces and occupying the zone. Since taking office in January, President Trump and his allies have not held back when it comes to how they feel and how they characterize federal judges who have written rulings against administration policies. Here is some of what we have heard them say.
This was a smackdown to a rogue left-wing, low-level district court judge.
No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation.
In recent months, we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president.
Missouri Republican Senator Eric Schmidt joins me now. He has a new book out. The title, The Last Line of Defense, How to Beat the Left in Court, principally about his time as the Attorney General of the Show Me State, Missouri. Senator, it's good to have you. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Great to be with you, Garrett.
You can call me Major.
Major Garrett, that is, Mr. Good. Major Garrett. Major Garrett. By the way, I feel terrible. As you're a Mizzou guy. You're a Mizzou guy. So
that's all right. That's all right.
We're very proud of all your work.
All forgiveness extended. I read the book, and a lot of it is, of course, about COVID and social media platforms. And you argue that conservatives in America were disproportionately victimized during COVID and by social media platforms. Do you believe that was intentional or collateral damage?
No, I think that was precisely the point. And when we filed the Missouri versus Biden lawsuit, at the time it was called a conspiracy theory and nothing to it. And we're accused of doing it for publicity. And we made a strategic decision that, in that case, Major, where we sought discovery first before the injunction. And the discovery that we got, you got to remember this is before Elon Musk bought Twitter and the Twitter files and everything else. It was mind-blowing. I mean, you had secret portals where high-ranking government officials were communicating and coercing social media platforms to take people down. This started 3 days into the administration. We took the deposition of Anthony Fauci. We took the deposition of Elvis Chan, who you might remember is the FBI agent who was pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story. So to me, the takeaway was this was a leviathan of government agencies that were weaponized to censor Americans. And we all know you can't do it under the First Amendment. The government can't. But you can't outsource that to some of the biggest companies in the history of the world. And so that's why I wrote the book. There's a lot of lessons learned here and really a playbook for standing up and fighting back for those core liberties that Americans should enjoy that were under assault during the Biden administration.
Senator, if there is a district court judge or a appellate court judge who rules against the Trump administration, is that judge by definition a rogue judge?
Not necessarily, but I do think, take for example, Judge Boasberg. Judge Boasberg got a number of these high-profile cases in the D.C. District Court. He wasn't the emergency judge on duty. He was on vacation in some of these, including some of the deportation cases. Somehow got it. It's supposed to be randomly assigned. He wasn't the guy that was supposed to get it that night and issued a really kind of an out-of-bounds decision. He's been smacked down now by the Supreme Court on a couple of occasions. And so I think in some instances, yes, these judges are going off rogue and introducing their own political bias and ought to be called out for that. And I think most of these cases, Major, as they made their way through these district court cases, they're frustrating for the Trump administration initially, but as they made their way through, by and large, he's been successful on personnel and programming and also on the deportations as it's made its way up the appellate courts and ultimately to the Supreme Court.
Chief Justice Roberts has urged the president to be cautious in his denunciations of the federal bench. He's also expressed some concern about the danger that those on the federal judiciary face from this kind of rhetoric. Do you share those concerns at all?
Well, I do think more people should have spoken out when Chuck Schumer stood on the Supreme Court steps and said that the justices are about to reap a whirlwind and then faced assassination attempts. So I feel like that, a one-sided review all this is not exactly fair. And I didn't hear a lot of commentary when we saw the lawfare and the weaponization of the FBI and the Justice Department to try to take out their chief political opponent. So I think the Democrats are really the ones who have weaponized the judicial system, unfortunately. That's why I wrote the book, Last Line of Defense. You got to stand up and push back. I want everyone to be treated fairly and equally under the law. Unfortunately, during the Biden administration, we saw a Department of Justice that was weaponized against political opponents.
And under the Trump Justice Department, do you see retribution or just rebalancing?
I think, look, this was the subject of a lot of the confirmation hearings for Pam Bondi, Kash Patel. Kash Patel in particular, who was a victim of this, I think they want to restore credibility by making sure people are treated fairly. But I do think there ought to be accountability. I mean, you just take the Russia hoax, for example, Major. Like, I just don't think you can concoct a story, launder it through intelligence reports, and then try to sideline a presidency. I mean, that's a pretty big deal in this country, and it's a big scandal. So we'll see if accountability happens with that. But certainly people are becoming much more aware of how insidious this really was within the FBI in particular, and a lot of other agencies, including CISA, which is an agency nobody's really ever heard of. But they were also censoring speech through big tech companies and going after political speech they didn't agree with. I just think this is something that we shouldn't tolerate in the country. And in order to restore trust, I think, in these institutions, there needs to be transparency and accountability.
Does that mean prosecution?
Potentially. I think that they're definitely, I've got an op-ed out this week, Major, where there is a path, I think, for prosecution in the Russiagate case if you talk about a conspiracy, because although the statute of limitations may have expired on some of the potential charges, not on an ongoing conspiracy. And I think if you're going to see indictments, which I think there probably should be in this instance, that would be the avenue I would guess that they might pursue.
You mentioned the FBI. Your successor as Missouri Attorney General, Andrew Bailey, was recently tapped to be the co-deputy director. What's that about, and how much of that has to do with the Deputy Director, Diane Bongino's expressed reservations about the way the administration is proceeding with the Epstein matter?
Yeah, I mean, all I could say is what I know, which is Andrew Bailey did a great job following me, and I think they want more hands on deck in the FBI. There's a lot of reform, and I think some more house cleaning that needs to happen with, again, you just got to go back in time. I mean, parents were being investigated for going to school board meetings under the auspices of the Patriot Act. Traditional Catholics were being spied on because they went to a Latin mass. I mean, this stuff is pretty wild. And so I think there's some house cleaning still to do in the FBI, and I think Andrew will be a part of that reform movement.
Are you satisfied with the administration's approach to the Epstein files so far?
I think there needs to be more transparency. I really do. Hopefully there's more to come there. But, it's also hard to know as a former prosecutor what exactly people are looking at. But I think that'd be a good thing if there's some more transparency.
Very quickly, Senator, before I let you go, Tom Tillis told me earlier this week he sees no reason for the majority leader to hold back any longer on the sanctions package against Russia that has 87 co-sponsors, meaning Republicans and Democrats. Do you agree?
I probably disagree with my friend, Senator Tillis, on that. I want to follow the president's lead on this right now. That we have that in the holster if we want to use, but we're right now in the middle of a really high-stakes negotiation between Russia and Ukraine that the president, through sheer will and I think determination, is bringing these parties together. Nobody else on the planet could do it. No European leader could do it. The former president, Joe Biden, never wanted to do it. President Trump has got Putin at the table, Zelensky at the table, hopefully, for some negotiations. Let's see how that plays out. I think that's what diplomacy is all about. It's hard, it can be frustrating, and sometimes it takes longer than it's supposed to, but we do have a president, I think, that's dedicated to the peace process, and I want to see that play out.
Missouri Republican Senator Eric Schmidt, I hope you'll come back. Thanks for your time.
We'll do it. Thanks, Major.
An environmental ruling is expected to be made on so-called Alligator Alcatraz. What that could mean for the future of that detention center in the Florida Everglades. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back. Thanks for hanging out with us. A federal judge is set to rule very soon on the future of the immigration detention center in Florida, called by some Alligator Alcatraz. An environmental group and Native American tribes sued over concerns that facility would, or probably already has, in their view, harmed the surrounding Everglades. Camilo Montoya Galvez joins me now from the Broadcast Center in New York. Camilo, so much stuff to talk to you about in the immigration space. Catch us up on this matter before the federal judge.
Well, Major, this federal judge in Florida could very well decide to order an immediate and indefinite pause on construction and operations at this so-called Alligator Alcatraz facility in the middle of the Florida Everglades, where state officials have been detaining people who are suspected of being in the country illegally and who are facing deportation. A Native American tribe, as you underscored, and a group of activists are alleging that Florida did not undertake any environmental reviews to construct this facility, despite federal laws that require that review to be undertaken before any major construction project. Florida is arguing in court that Alligator Alcatraz is not subject to those federal environmental reviews, Major, because it is a state-run facility that is housing federal detainees yet, but under state control because state officials in Florida have been deputized as immigration officials. So if the judge sides with the plaintiffs, the activists in this tribe, that would be a major setback, not only for Florida, but also for the Trump administration, which has been trying to persuade as many states as possible, as you know, Major, to allow state facilities to be turned into immigration detention centers. You've seen now Indiana and Nebraska also allow state prisons to be converted into immigration detaining centers for people awaiting deportation, Major.
Camilo, this is part of the matrix of the deportation process of the Trump administration. What do we know about the pace of deportations thus far?
Well, just to level set, Major, right now, ICE is currently holding about 60,000 detainees in detention centers across the country. That is a record high. We know that about 40% of them are non-criminal migrants who are in the country illegally or are suspected of being here without proper documentation, but otherwise do not have a criminal record. The rest have pending convictions or charges. We also know that in the first 6 months of the second Trump administration, ICE conducted about 150,000 deportations. That puts the agency on track to record the most deportations since the Obama administration, more than the first Trump administration. Still, it is nowhere near that 1 million per year deportation target that some Trump administration officials have floated. At the same time, it also does not include self-deportations, and that is a key element to this administration's immigration policy. They would like to see as many people leave the country voluntarily by making it really difficult for people to stay here if they're here illegally, and Alligator Alcatraz, Guantanamo Bay are some of those messages of deterrence that the administration hopes will prompt people to leave the country voluntarily.
Camila Montoya Galvez, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Bloated and biased. That's what Tulsi Gabbard is saying as she axes nearly half of her staff at the Department of National Intelligence. Closer look at that next. Welcome back. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard is cutting her office's staff by about 40%. The agency's headcount will still be around 1,300. After this downsizing, ODNI, that's what it's called here in D.C., had approximately 2,000 employees in February. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now. Sam, always great to have you here. You know, even before this second iteration of the Trump administration, I read think tank reports right and left saying ODNI had gotten way too big, huge mission creep. What is it doing? True? Fair?
We are actually, Major, almost 20 years and 4 months to the day when ODNI first opened its doors, April 22nd, I believe, 2005. Over the course of its history, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has grown in size. But I will note, so too has its mission. And this is where Director Gabbard is actually focusing part of the why she's engaging in this reduction.
Meaning instructions from Congress on what it should do.
Not just from Congress. The president has a prerogative to set what are known as national intelligence priorities, to really identify what are the core intelligence issues the intelligence community should focus on in any given year. Those national intelligence priorities drive the budget. They drive resources. They drive focus. And every president has the discretion to set those, brief Congress, and move forward. The range of issues that our intelligence community is focused on has grown significantly since 2005, not to mention the capabilities we employ to just collect intelligence, including advanced technology. So I think one of the healthiest parts of our intelligence community is the ability for the director to look inward and to identify where change is needed so that the intelligence community stays agile and stays relevant. But Director Gabbard has given various reasons for why she's engaging in this reduction, including cost savings to reduce bloat and to get rid of the weaponization and politicization of intelligence.
I remember when it was founded, the idea was to do something that was considered a rear view flaw pre-9/11. Too much siloing, not enough communication of what was being gathered, spread around all the agencies. Is that ODNI still its principal mission?
It sure is. And the Intelligence Reform and Terrorism Prevention Act of 2004 gave ODNI this mission to really integrate intelligence across the community. There are 18 organizations and entities that comprise the intelligence community. Many of them have similar focuses, but for different mission purposes. So you'll have a Department of Defense intelligence entity working on something that another entity might be looking at, but to support a different mission. The whole goal is to make sure everyone's talking to each other, that there are not redundancies, and that we don't miss a threat because one organization isn't engaging with the other. The other goal is to ensure continuity of operations, and that analysis is fulsome, that all the different perspectives from the intelligence community are presented in an intelligence assessment with various confidence levels.
Quickly, does cutting the ODNI, meaning the director's staff, in any way hamstring these efforts?
I think that ensuring that there are adequate personnel to effectuate integration across the intelligence community is critical. I will note that this cut in staff is actually doing away with certain parts of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, like something known as the Foreign Line Influence Center, which was very critical to reviewing election interference efforts by foreign nation states. It's doing away with the National Intelligence University. It is doing away with a Biosecurity and Counterproliferation Center within the ODNI. So you will lose that integration function on those particular issues.
Not cost-free. Might be cost savings, but not cost-free. Sam Gunnerbrand, always a pleasure. Thank you. Over here to over two, guy, Governor two. All right. Police called them liars, wrongly accused of making up a home invasion and kidnapping, but now this California couple is working with law enforcement and being honored for so doing. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. The couple wrongly accused by police of a kidnapping hoax was recently documented in Netflix's American Nightmare. Well, they're now working with law enforcement. CBS News California investigative correspondent Julie Watts spoke to Denise and Erin Quinn, who were recently honored as California's Witnesses of the Year.
You're about to hear never-before-released cold case confessions recorded during recent in-custody interviews with Matthew Mueller, the serial predator who kidnapped Denise Huskins and has now confessed to decades of similar home invasions and sexual assaults.
We're back in Tahoe, not far from where this all started. What's it like for you to be in this room this close to where you were held hostage?
Yeah. At a law enforcement conference in South Lake Tahoe.
It's bittersweet to be able to be here and reclaim this as something positive.
The woman once discredited by authorities is now helping to train them, alongside her now husband, Erin Quinn, and the two officers who finally believed them.
She's dead. Understand that I've accepted that.
Together, this team helped solve at least 4 cold case crimes this year. Crimes that may have been solved a decade ago if only someone had listened sooner.
They did not come into your house and kidnap her and take her for ransom.
March 2015, intruders did blindfold and drug the couple in their Vallejo home, then kidnapped, raped, and held Denise for ransom while police falsely accused Erin of killing her.
Okay, how do I make it so you look like a monster?
Instead of searching for the kidnapper,
it is Mr. Quinn and Ms. Huskins that owes this community an apology.
When the kidnapper released Denise, police accused the couple of orchestrating a hoax.
The members of our community are safe.
They weren't.
The real tragedy is now we know there's 2 other families that Mueller terrorized and attacked.
2 months later, their attackers struck again in nearby Dublin, California, leading police to Matthew Mueller's Tahoe cabin, where he held Denise captive. 1 month later, Denise and Erin were finally vindicated. Mueller was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, but the nightmare wasn't over.
At one point, he laid down on the bed next to me and then just started telling me how he...
2015 interrogation recordings revealed Denise warned investigators a decade ago that Mueller told her there were other victims.
Like you said, they've probably done this before.
But for 10 years, they couldn't get anyone to investigate. Then, last year's most-watched Netflix docuseries chronicled Denise and Erin's American Nightmare. And small-town Seaside Police Chief Nick Borges reached out to them on Instagram.
Denise was first to respond back to me.
What began as a conversation soon became a mission to bring closure to Mueller's other victims.
But I remember her saying, but we're not law enforcement, what do we do? And that's kind of where I said, well, let me try to help.
So, working with Denise, Erin, and Misty, he wrote directly to Matthew Mueller. For the first time, we're showing you Mueller's cold case confessions from behind bars, limited excerpts to protect victim privacy and ongoing investigations. First, Mueller confessed in a letter to 2 home invasion attempted rapes in Santa Clara County in 2009. Police questioned Mueller at the time, but said they didn't have enough evidence to charge him. Despite similarities to Denise's case 7 years later, they never reopened those cold cases or retested Mueller's DNA.
It's fair to say that there are things that we would do differently and do better today. That's because of the Quinns.
This year, Santa Clara County DA Jeff Rosen finally tested Mueller's DNA. When Mueller was finally sentenced to 2 life terms for those 16-year-old crimes,
it came the week of the 10-year anniversary of our kidnapping. So it was very wow, just looking back and all that we had gone through and everything that it took to get to this place.
And that was just the beginning. Next, Mueller confessed to an unreported 2015 home invasion robbery in Contra Costa County, just 2 weeks after he released Denise and months before he was arrested.
Tied them up, went to the son's room, woke him up.
In recorded confessions, Mueller describes how he convinced the family to keep the crime a secret, threatening his accomplices would find and harm their kids.
There's very good reason if they didn't report it.
Contra Costa DA Dinah Becton stresses this one wasn't a cold case.
We had no knowledge that they had suffered this horrible crime.
They found the victims still living in fear from a crime that wouldn't have even been investigated without Denise and Erin and the officers who finally believed them. Mueller got another life sentence, but his confessions didn't end there.
One of the most striking things is finding out how young he was when he started.
Mueller describes in chilling detail how he ambushed a couple camping in Sacramento County back in 1993 when he was still a teen.
I ordered them out of the tent. I told them I had a gun. I believe I tied them both.
Through Denise's and Erin's persistence, we were able to bring justice to other victims.
Last month, Sacramento County DA Tin Ho secured a 4th life sentence for Mueller. The culmination of 6 crimes, more than a dozen victims, 32 years of unanswered questions and justice delayed. But thanks to Denise and Erin, they were not forgotten. Denise and Erin are now working with law enforcement to sponsor legislation that they hope will address some of the failings highlighted by their case. For instance, Denise's rape kit wasn't even tested until this year. They'd also like to see every officer get better training on how to work with victims and suspects to help solve crimes.
Julie Watts joins me now for more on this amazing story that she has covered and developed so thoroughly. So tell me more about Denise and Erin. Is their work done, or do they consider themselves going to be in this space for a very long time?
Oh, no, they're going to continue. They're working right now with law enforcement to try to figure out how to create a standardized trauma-informed training for officers. Think about this, Major. Officers across the country get dozens of hours of firearm training. They may never fire a gun in the line of duty. They deal with victims. They interact with victims probably every day, if not every week, and they don't have any standardized training on how to do that. In Denise's case, they said she didn't act the way a victim should. They judged her credibility based on a lack of understanding of basic neuroscience, and so they really believe that with better training, that these officers could actually solve more crimes and, frankly, with victims' help.
Julie, there are so many compelling parts of this story. For me, I'm wondering what was most compelling, revealing, or impactful for you?
You know, what's interesting is their story was sensational, but it's not unique. And I've really learned that. I was struck by how victims of violent crime can be re-victimized by a systemic lack of control. They have no control over the investigation, over how they're treated, or whether they're believed, or whether the evidence is even tested. In her case, they just now tested her rape kit. They have no control over even facing their attacker. Denise and Erin wanted to face Mueller in prison, and they were denied full stop by the warden, no explanation. And Denise says that really took away her agency, her ability to make that choice. But most impactful to me was how the media coverage impacted them. And you know, Major, really made me think about trauma-informed journalism training and what we can all learn from their story.
Julie Watts, incredible work. Thanks so very much for joining us. I appreciate it. I need to tell you about this before we go. We are tracking reports of an active shooter at Villanova University near Philadelphia. A shelter-in-place order is in effect, and local police are advising people to avoid the law school on that campus. CBS News 24/7 will bring you updates as we here at CBS News receive them. That's it for the Takeout today.